This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the town of North Haven.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our July Board of Selectmen meeting. I'm Mike Frieda, North Haven's first Selectman, joined as always by our second Selectman, Mr. William Piper, and our third Selectwoman, Miss Sally Buemi. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'd like to ask everyone to rise for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 2, are there any comments to tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to item number 3, the approval of the minutes of the Board of Selectmen meeting of June 2nd.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second Sally's motion.
All right, we have a motion and we have a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 4, I have no slides tonight, but I have a major announcement that I'd like to get to very, very shortly. In terms of, I'll start with economic development, and I'll just focus in on a couple of different projects that I've been trying to bring to a resolution. The at-home retailer down at Universal Drive, the original opening date was supposed to be June 30th. Due to supply chain backups, there's been a delay. The new date is July 26th. That will happen, ladies and gentlemen. The 80,000 square foot retailer filling the space of Best Buy, where Ulta was, and we're in the Best Buy Plaza, I should say. Toys R Us, Babies R Us, and Ulta. There's works being done there now. There was a supply chain shortage on shelving, and every retailer needs shelves. So that's been the delay. That's going to be now July 26th. South of the Guilford Savings Bank, the Five Guys, the Starbucks, and the to-be-determined third business, that was supposed to open up June 30th also. Starbucks will probably be the first one to open within the next 10 days to 2 weeks. Five Guys has some equipment that they have been unable to get because of supply chain backups. So we're looking at probably the end of July for the second one, Five Guys, to populate that plaza. And I'm hoping to have by the end of July at least an announcement on the third business that is going to go there. So what's happening with some of these projects, and the hotel is a good example on Universal Drive, that was a 2-month delay after previous delays. The first delay was the pandemic. Banks were not issuing credit to hotels that were being built because no one was staying at hotels during a pandemic. We got through that. Now, because of supply chain backups, the hotel is delayed, but it's delayed 2 months. So if you drive by Universal Drive, you'll see the site has been cleared. But the good news is the Panera Bread store that I've been trying to bring forward is already broken ground. So there'll be a new standalone Panera Bread next to the Chick-fil-A there, and then the hotel will start after that. Crumble Cookies, another good example. You know, we thought we'd have that open up. That's over at Universal Drive between Dick's Sporting Goods and Home Depot. We thought we'd have that opened up by the end of June. Now it looks like somewhere between July 15th and July 22nd. It's a gourmet cookie shop. It's very popular in many parts of the country, and we're fortunate enough to have them. We have 225 apartments with retail mixed use being built. That has gone pretty well. And that's across the street from where Breakfast Nook used to be. Breakfast Nook, for those that don't know, relocated across the street over into what was once Demir's restaurant there. It's a larger facility for them and has a greater capacity for outdoor dining. So those are some of the delays that I wanted to share with everybody on just a few of the projects that I've been working on for economic development. So tonight I want to make a major announcement, and I want to preface my remarks by saying that we have had a very difficult time hiring people here. It's a very competitive job market. Many companies are offering signing bonuses, and we have had a problem here. So shortly after the referendum passed, we started putting feelers out. We advertised positions, and in 2 key positions in this government, we had only a few people who were interested, and the people who were interested, 2 of whom I really liked, they wanted at least $30,000 more than what is budgeted in our budget for the Director of Procurement and Administration and the Comptroller. So the major announcement I'm making tonight is that I've approached Rich Monaco. Rich Monaco will be resigning from the Board of Finance as chairman. And Rich Monaco joined us this week as the Director of Purchasing and Administration. And the reason I reached out for Rich and asked him if he would consider it, Rich and his brothers are owners of a company. Rich gave it some thought, and Rich will be now joining us full-time here and leaving his full-time position in his company. As the Director of Procurement and Administration, I need someone that has contract experience, dealing with unions, union contracts, who has extensive experience in purchasing, who understands how to put bid processes together, and who oversees administration, including overseeing payroll. He's done all this in his company. So Rich Monaco joined us. He accepted the position. I asked him to apply. And after considerable thought with him and his family members in his company, Rich has joined us, and he started Tuesday. He will be announcing shortly his resignation from the Board of Finance. Tim Doheny will assume the chair position, and now we need to fill a Board of Finance position. So Rich has been here now for 2 days. He knows everybody here. The department heads have embraced him. The people in the finance department know him, and his responsibilities will be primarily overseeing procurement, overseeing the bid processes, overseeing administration, dealing with contracts, working with our town attorney on the union contract negotiations. I will still be overseeing the finances here. And I'm hoping that by next week, Sally and Bill, we have a woman who I really would like to have join us as a controller here. And we'll be interviewing her next week. And if she accepts the position, she actually will be put in the position that the late Ed Swinkowski had when he joined the town of North Haven back in 2004. He was the comptroller there. And when I took office, I had promoted him to the Director of Finance. So we're hoping that we can fill at least that position to help fortify the finance department and to give us some much needed help. So that's the major announcement. Rich will announce his resignation from the Board of Finance later this week or early next week. That's the major announcement.
Yeah, a lot of this, like yours, I think, as you just mentioned a second ago, was unfortunately fortunately related to Ed's untimely passing, earlier this year. And, with Rich being the chairman of the Board of Finance for 13 years now, I think he's worked very, collaboratively with all the department heads and the Board of Education. So I think it's great that he's willing to do that based on your dialogue with him. And it clearly is. I know from the company that I work for, or have worked for. It's been very difficult to find new people in terms of the number of job openings we've had, and the number of people we've lost to competitors based on this job market. There's more, both nationally and in Connecticut. True at the state level. If you look at the huge numbers of number of people that are short, like in the Department of Transportation at the state level, is unbelievable. And they can't find people who are skilled, who are willing to do those jobs. And so I think we're really fortunate to have Rich be willing to help out. And it would be great if the lady you were talking about could could come on board as well, because I think we definitely need it, from the standpoint of creating some tenure and continuity in the finance department.
Well, I hope she accepts because she has munis experience. She is involved with another municipality right now, who shall remain nameless. She's looking for some advancement and upward mobility, which I can provide for her here. And it'll be a key position if we can get her, so.
Yes, this is the controller position. Is she a CPA?
No.
Okay, because I remember the late Ed Swinkowski talking to me a great deal about how he was the only CPA
That's right.
down there, and when the old position of Assistant Director of Finance was created, we were told that person would be a badly needed CPA. I don't think Mr. Monaco is a CPA.
No.
So we still have no CPA. The late Ed Swinkowski, again, very devoted public servant here, wore many hats. And one of them was, my understanding was like a personnel director, a human resources director. So I don't see that very important element of Ed's job filled by your description of Mr. Monaco's.
So let me
Is that you?
No, let me comment on that.
Yeah.
So Rich will end up taking that over. I've been doing that these last 6 months. But because he just started, he'll have to grow and he'll have to graduate into that. And that's what he does for his company also. So he'll be eventually overseeing HR, working with Anne Marie downstairs, and handling the personnel issues. Because I've been involved with all the HR and the personnel issues here for the last 6 months.
Yeah, well, business experience is very helpful in the public sector, but they're also quite different.
Well, that's
the
true.
goal
That's
of,
true. I
of
learned
business
that.
is a profit. The goal of government is a service, so the motivation is quite different. But these types of assignments, if you will, for Mr. Monaco, contract experience, union experience, payroll, I could see that. I'm very happy to hear that Tim Doheny will be the new chair of the Board of Finance. That's something I've been hoping for quite some time. I had the pleasure of serving with Tim for 4 years on the Board of Selectmen, and I found him to be very hardworking and dedicated and of utmost integrity, and I think he would do a great job as chair of the Board of Finance. How is your feeling about the former chairman of the Board of Finance taking that seat over there at Board of Finance meetings? I assume that's where what he'll be doing.
No, he won't be involved. I'll be updating the Board of Finance on the finances.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so.
Because I figured, because so much of what he's doing is taking over from, is the bulk of Mr. Swinkowski's jobs, I thought he would be.
No.
And I see a problem with that.
He will not be here. The comptroller, if I can get her, she'll be here with me. And I'll be handling the updates of the Board of Finance like I have been with the new woman if we can get her.
Okay, well, that makes me feel, this is a major announcement, and I may have more comments about it later. I mean, this is the first I'm hearing of it, but these are my initial reaction and concerns, but you're telling me he will not be advising the
He will
Board of
not be
Finance.
in the Board of Finance meetings.
Okay, okay. All right. I'm a little disappointed that we could not get a CPA. And again, I'm making that statement only based on my many conversations with Mr. Swinkowski when he used to complain that there was just one downstairs and now we have none. But that's okay.
Let me further elaborate on this,
Sure.
okay? Because it's a good point that you're making. So we had an individual, we were working with an outside agency to help us, okay? We had an individual, his name was Keyshore, and I thought he would be perfect. He was a CPA, and is a CPA. So He was looking for $124,500. The job is posted for $87,500, roughly $84,700, whatever it is. Okay, so in the supervisors union. So with the supervisors union contract being settled, and I settled that after Ed passed away, there's a 2.5% raise in there that would be reflected in the budget. Okay, through contractual
Yes,
obligations.
I recall, we, as a board, approved that, yes.
So we couldn't pay him the $124,500. So what I did was I offered to bring him in 3 days a week to stay within the budgeted number of roughly $84,700, which would coincide with our budgeted number, so we would not overspend. They accepted verbally, and then the agency called me back and said he got a job for $127,000 on a full-time basis, so I lost him.
Yeah. Well, I understand what basically happened with the budget amounts that were passed at the referendum. You know, we lost, of course, Mr. Swinkowski. He had a yearly pay in the neighborhood of $126, but he also got the stipend of $18,000 as Director of Recreation and Community Services, but that has been taken away.
Yeah.
Fortunately, because I always thought that was a bit too much. We have someone now over there, right, for community services and recreation.
You're looking at.
But well, I mean, Andy is still the assistant,
yeah, he's
but
assistant, right.
and we have, and I thought that Judy, who resigned at the senior center, is over there part-time. So there's some help there. But this the Director of Administration and Procurement, which is, I think, in the $90,000 range, and the Controller, which was around 87, was sort of taking the place of Mr. Swinkowski. We were, which again shows how hard he worked, because we're replacing him with two people, dividing up his.
Well, you have to understand that, you know, what Ed and I were locked at the hip together. So I was always involved with everything Ed was involved with.
Yeah.
So he did a great job, and I miss him, I really do. But, so anyway, continue.
Well, I believe that, because every time I called to talk to Ed, they told me he was upstairs talking to you, so. So that was true, what he just said.
Thank you.
But, yeah, so basically, you know, it took a lot of maneuvering and creating of positions to replace him. And because we divided his position really into two positions, well under 100,000.
Yeah.
Am I correct with 90 and 87?
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm seeing in my mind. For the Controller and the Director of Procurement, you know, by dividing it, because it really should be divided, and putting it at those amounts, I think that's what hurt us in getting someone perhaps that could have done it all, another Ed. But we'll see how this works, and I hope that. I have great confidence in your evaluation of the person that you want for Controller, so hopefully that person will come along.
So in the beginning, I already have seen some relief, okay? So I'll give you an example. So now that Rich has been here for 2 days, what's going to happen is I'm not going to have to be intimately involved with personnel issues, payroll issues. So he's going to be handling all that, and has in the last 2 days. So I'm going to say something tonight, folks. I don't want to raise the expectation level, but I have a Trader Joe's project I'm working on, and I can't get to it because I've been so mired down internally in this government with all these issues I've been involved with. And I think that you watching would prefer me to try to bring in this Trader Joe's than to deal with some of the small issues that I get consumed with every day here. And now I can get freed up and at least a little bit, and concentrate on doing some other things to continue to grow this top line revenue here. And we went from 0 chance on Trader Joe's, rejected for years here, Reminded me when I was in the Catholic schools at Notre Dame, walking across the gymnasium and wanted to ask the girls from St. Mary's or Sacred Heart for a dance. Even then, they used to say, Mike's showing some leadership here. He's the first one to walk across the gymnasium to ask someone to dance. But it was a lonely walk back, having been rejected all those years. So I'm used to rejection. And Trader Joe's is a good example. But I've got to get on this project.
Yeah, well, hey, I certainly want your time to be used elsewhere as well. And when, in January, when Mr. Swinkowski passed and you announced that you were taking over the role, in essence at that time, all of his roles, I was like, how's he gonna do that?
You did say that. I'll give you credit. You did
Okay,
from the beginning.
so I don't want you to misinterpret my comments here. I'm supportive of you getting help, but I think the way we divided it with the salaries attached there too, sort of limited a little bit
It did.
the qualifications of those applying. And as you've just described, we lost people because whatever. So let's, I am always for let's wait and see and think about it. And so thank you for announcing.
Next
that
month,
to
I'll
us.
have an update on this young lady. I hope we can get. Her resume is outstanding. I spoke with her, and she would be really good. So we'll see.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Next up, we have number 5, and this is another update from our town attorney who's here tonight, Mrs. Jennifer Capola, on the Affordable Housing Initiative that we filed an extension for, which was originally due by June 30th. Jennifer?
We really need a podium over there.
Yeah.
I'm carrying my laptop. I may sit down with my laptop in a minute when I present the next item because it's a little more involved. Good evening. Nice to see all of you. Happy
Hello.
summer. So in terms of the affordable housing plan, as you know, we received a draft through the consultant hired by the COG. That was, copies were given to you, I think last time I was here. And it was reviewed by myself, by your Affordable Housing Plan Advisory Committee. There were concerns expressed to me about content. At this point, we have retained a consultant to assist with finalizing the plan. And we will be meeting, the committee will be meeting with the consultant at the end of the month. We have July 25th. Monday, July 25th, as the date that's been selected, and we're going to move forward. The consultant is Glenn Chalder from Planometrics Inc., and Glenn is somebody who is held in very high regard in the planning world. He did, I don't know if you may recall, when I first talked to you about the affordable housing plan, I had indicated to you that there were a couple of towns that had decided to, in the COG, that had just decided to take their own path in terms of development of their plan. Branford did use Glenn to draft their plan, so he was Branford's consultant. He did, and that's really ultimately why I went to him for assistance, because the Branford plan was distributed to the committee. They were very pleased with its content, and we're hoping, that we can, working with him, we can bring this thing to conclusion, and then embark upon implementation of these strategies in the plan. So we'll have the plan as it stands right now is, again, Glenn will come meet with the committee on July 25th. He will revise the plan that we have. I've also done some revisions myself. I'll take those revisions into account. And my revisions are based upon the discussions that I've had with the committee over the course of the many meetings that they have held since the fall when you appointed them. And so he'll draft a revised plan, be back before the committee for some additional input to see if they're satisfied with the draft. He will then finalize it, and they will act upon, whether to refer it to you, and then I will present it to the Board of Selectmen And you can schedule the public hearing on it, as I know it is your intention to have a public hearing. The public hearing will be held, and if there's any changes coming out of the public hearing, I will take care of that for you. So that is the plan at this point. And, you know, we're hoping that date-wise everything's going to align. You have a very active committee in terms of both their professional obligations as well as their volunteer obligations. So, you know, finding meeting dates, because it is a committee of 10, you know, is at times somewhat difficult. So, but they have been terrific in terms of the amount of time that they've spent reviewing the many documents that I've given them, and just, you know, excellent in terms of the input that they've provided to the plan thus far. So. And we have a couple of members of the committee here tonight, Alden Mead and Bill Richards. So I thank them for their service. And the next item, would you like me to go on to the next item?
Okay. So item 6?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shall I read
Yes.
that?
Go ahead, Sally. You-
Sure. Item 6 on our agenda is a discussion of the provisions of Public Act number 21-29, an act concerning the Zoning Enabling Act, accessory apartments, training for certain land use officials, municipal affordable housing plans, and a commission on Connecticut's development and future, codified at Connecticut General Statute Section 8-20. Pertaining to accessory apartments or accessory dwelling units, including the action taken by the Planning and Zoning Commission on same and scheduling of a public hearing before the Board of Selectmen.
If I could just approach. So I had given you some time ago the Public Act regarding accessory apartments, accessory dwelling units, ADUs as the acronym's being used. And it was Public Act 21-29. It concerns, again, accessory apartments, accessory dwelling units, and also a limitation on dwelling unit parking. And obviously, the Public Act was codified in statute. You have before you a copy of the various statutory provisions. I just want to sort of refresh your recollection about content in terms of the process required in the statute. This is an opt-out statute, which means that if the municipality does not opt out, then the provisions of the statute become the local law. And that opt-out process is as follows. It's in, and you do, again, have the statutes in front of you. It's in Section 8-20, subsection F, and then 8-2P. It's the same for both topics. So you have to go through a separate opt-out process for each, for both the ADUs and also the parking limitations. It would be 2 separate public hearings. So you hold a public hearing on the proposed opt-out subject to the standard notice and timeframes for such hearings. And then you have to affirmatively decide by a 2/3 vote to opt out within the statutory time limit, generally within 65 days of the hearing's completion. State in the record the reasons for the board's decision, and then publish notice of the decision within 15 days in a newspaper that has substantial circulation in the municipality. And the statutes require that this opt-out occur, again, if the municipality so desires, at both the Planning and Zoning Commission level as well as the legislative body level. And in a town meeting form of government, it comes to you as the Board of Selectmen. So again, it's been some months since I've gone through this with you, so I just want to refresh you. So in terms of the content, and I think this is important to review again, in terms of the content of the statutes themselves, I'm going to just give you a summary. of that statutory content and what would become, again, the local law if you don't opt out. So generally, Section 8-20A, so you're going to want to go to the second page there, requires that zoning regulations adopted per the Zoning Enabling Act, which is Section 8-2, municipalities that zone under the Act have to adopt new or amend existing regulations to allow accessory dwelling units or accessory apartments as of right on the same lot as single-family homes by January 1st, 2023, unless they follow that opt-out process as I've explained it to you. And so the opt-out process for the accessory apartments or ADUs is in Section 8-20F. So in terms of the zoning regulations themselves, you'll see, again, at that second page, it starts with subsection A, 8-20, subsection A. A1 requires that zoning regulations, 1, designate locations or zoning districts within the municipality in which accessory apartments are allowed, provided at least one accessory apartment shall be allowed as of right on each lot that contains a single-family dwelling. Accessory apartment is defined in 8-1A subsection B1 as a separate dwelling unit that A, is located on the same lot as a principal dwelling unit of greater square footage, B, has cooking facilities, and C, complies with or is otherwise exempt from any applicable building code, fire code, and health and safety regulations. As of right is defined in A-1A B3 as able to be approved in accordance with the terms of a zoning regulation or regulations and without requiring that a public hearing be held, a variance, special permit, or special exception be granted, or some other discretionary zoning action be taken other than a determination that a site plan conforms with the applicable zoning regulations. In addition, and there's a lot more, in addition to the aforementioned designation and allowance, the statute requires that ADU zoning regulations do the following. 1, shall not require that an ADU be affordable, as defined by the statute. Allow attached and detached ADUs and ADUs contained within the principal dwelling unit. So that's an important point. Again, if you don't opt out, these become your regulations. So an ADU that is either in the same footprint as a single-family home, attached or detached, so we have 3 different types of accessory apartments, ADUs there, would be permitted if you don't opt out, okay? Set a maximum net floor area for ADUs that is lesser of A, at least 30% of the principal dwelling's net floor area, or B, 1,000 square feet, but regulations may allow a larger net floor area for ADUs. 4, require setbacks, lot size, and building frontage less than or equal to that which is required for the principal dwelling. 5, require lot coverage greater than or equal to that which is required for the principal dwelling. 6, provide for height, landscaping, and architectural design standards that do not exceed standards applied to single-family dwellings in the municipality. And 7, establish an as-of-right permit application and review process for ADUs. The process must require the Zoning or Planning and Zoning Commission to decide within 65 days after an application, unless an applicant approves an extension or extensions of up to 65 days total or withdraws the application. And it goes on. Moreover, okay, as prohibited by Section 8-20A6, you have that in front of you as well, the ADU regulations passed by a municipality cannot require the following. 1, a passageway between the ADU and principal dwelling. 2, an exterior door for an ADU, except as required by the applicable building or fire code. 3, more than 1 parking space for the ADU or fees in lieu of parking. 4, a familial, marital, or employment relationship between the principal dwelling unit's occupants and the ADU's occupants. 5, a minimum age for ADU occupants. 6, separate billing of utilities otherwise connected to or used by the principal dwelling unit. Or 7, periodic ADU permit renewal. So all of those things are prohibited. Other provisions of the statute provide that the requirements of the statute do not supersede applicable building code requirements. The statute does not supersede other requirements where a well or private sewage system is being used, provided approval for any such accessory apartment must not be unreasonably withheld. Municipalities are not prevented from prohibiting or limiting the use of ADUs for short-term rentals or vacation stays. That's a big issue right now, as you probably know, the short-term rental issue. Municipalities cannot condition ADU approval on the correction of a non-conforming use, structure, or lot. 5, municipalities cannot require the installation of fire sprinklers in an ADU unless they are also required in the principal dwelling or by the fire code. And then 6, municipalities, special districts, and sewer or water authorities are prevented from, 1, considering an ADU to be a new residential use for the purposes of calculating connection fees or capacity charges for utilities, including water and sewer service, unless the ADU was constructed with a new single-family dwelling on the same lot, or 2, requiring the installation of a new or separate utility connection directly to an ADU or imposing a related connection fee or capacity charge. So I want to point out one thing to you, and this is a very important. I explained this to P&Z. If you look at 8-20 subsection E, so it's actually at the end of subsection E. It's on the very last page of what I gave you, on page 31. It's at the very top. It's that last sentence there. So subsection E, it says, if a municipality fails to adopt new regulations or amend existing regulations by January 1st, 2023 for the purpose of complying with the provisions of subsections A to D inclusive, so A to D includes everything I just explained to you, of this section, and unless such municipality opts out of the provisions of said subsections in accordance with the provisions of subsection F of this section, so that's the opt-out for the ADUs, is subsection F, any non-compliant existing regulation shall become null and void. So if there's any regulation about accessory apartments, which you don't have in your zoning regulations, but any non-compliant existing regulation should become null and void, and such municipality shall approve or deny applications for accessory apartments in accordance with the requirements for regulations set forth in the provisions of subsection A to D inclusive of this section until such municipality adopts or amends a regulation in compliance with these subsections. So if you don't opt out, planning and zoning has to adopt regulations that comply with the statutory sections that I just explained to you. But that last sentence at the top of page 31 of subsection A says the following: a municipality may not use or impose additional standards beyond those set forth in subsections A to D inclusive of this section. So by its plain language, what that is saying is that if you don't opt out as a municipality, what's contained in the statute becomes your regulations, and there's no opportunity to amend. So if there's an issue with some component of it in terms of enforcement, you don't have the ability, planning and zoning does not have the ability to go and change those regulations until such time as there's legislative action that changes the provision of the statute.
Right, Jen.
So I think that's a very important point.
So planning and zoning has already voted to opt out,
So
right?
they've voted to opt out of this as well as the parking limitation. And in terms of that parking limitation, it's very simple. It's in section 8-2D9. That's the first page that you have there. It provides that zoning regulation shall not require more than one parking space for each studio or one-bedroom dwelling unit, or more than 2 parking spaces for each dwelling unit with 2 or more bedrooms, unless the municipality opts out. So again, no more than 1 parking space for each studio and 1 bedroom, and no more than 2 parking spaces for each dwelling unit with 2 or more bedrooms. So, again, the same issue. This becomes the regulation. It cannot change. I will say this too. I was asked to draft potential reasons for, after Planning and Zoning decided that they wanted to opt out, they wanted to hold a public hearing to get public comment. I was asked to draft potential reasons for them to consider as the basis for their action. And with regard to the parking, I will tell you that that language goes against some expert opinion that has been given on parking in terms of parking requirements. So I think that is a very important point with regard to that issue.
All right, do we need to call a town meeting to
You don't. It would be a public hearing before your board, and again, there would be a public hearing on the ADU provisions, and there would be a public hearing on the parking. So they would be separate, and you would act separately.
So planning and zoning's already voted on this?
Yes,
Okay.
Planning and Zoning has acted to opt out. The decision was unanimous. They stated their reasons on their record.
That was my question. What was
Yeah,
the vote?
It was unanimous,
Yes.
Okay, so we, according to subsection F here, because we have a town meeting form of government, the Board of Selectmen, after a hearing on both matters, makes a final decision on whether to opt out or not. I think it would be
Ultimately.
helpful for the folks who may want to attend the public hearing and ask questions or give their opinions, if you could summarize, this is a big if, how opting out versus not opting out affects us based on what is currently in our regulations.
So you don't have a provision for accessory apartments. Obviously, you do have parking requirements. So I can certainly put something together and put something online in terms of, providing folks with the law and a summary of the law. I'm happy to do that.
Right, because we're hearing about all of this, if we don't opt out, this is gonna happen, if we, but we need to know how that changes what our existing, and I don't think a lot of people might not know that, so I think
That
would
accessory,
be-
you think people may not know that accessory apartments are not allowed currently?
Well, certainly those who've gone through, or, there are people who certainly would not know that. But I just think it's important to know specifically why opting out is something that we would want to consider.
Well, I think you kind of indicated that if you don't opt out, you're stuck with the statute
Right.
forever.
Yeah.
If we opt out, we can put a regulation in and still change the regulation.
So I will say
So it gives
this.
us the flexibility, if I understood you correctly.
Absolutely.
Right.
We could even be very similar to the statute and then still have the ability to fine tune it at a later date if we.
So we have a recording of P and Z's discussion. That's something that can be
Yeah.
shared with the board, certainly.
think-
That's something that I can provide you with a copy of so that you have an understanding of what they discussed and the reasons they identified for their action. I will say this too, that we do have currently, I think as part of our consideration, potential strategies for the affordable housing plan, to look at accessory apartments, because we're not only concerned with affordable, but we're concerned with diversity of housing stock as well, right? Going through the process. But one of the first things I said is that the statute prohibits a requirement that the accessory apartment be affordable.
Right.
So what that would mean is it would either have to come through, in an application format for new apartments where the developer is either submitting an 830G application or they're proposing set aside as affordable, or for instance, if it were an apartment that was in an existing footprint, you would have to get the property owner, and I think really the only way that you could do this would be to incentivize them to deed restrict as affordable. That's the only other way that you would get credit for affordable. So these are all, matters that we are discussing at the committee level. I know that Mr. Chalder, will be discussing these things with the committee as well as he looks to finalize your plan. So
I think that's very interesting to understand that dynamic, that this, the Affordable Housing Committee work is sort of like the backdrop to some of this. And as Bill said, if we opt out, we have the flexibility. And I'm all in favor of flexibility and more local control of what we do. But I still think people should understand what specifically this would change or not change. But I think that's a very interesting point, that the affordable housing, the committee work is sort of intertwined with this as well.
it is.
Okay.
All right,
So we have to set a hearing date
The
tonight?
date for a public hearing is what I would like you to do. And certainly, we could get some materials up with regard to this on the Board of Selectmen page, I guess would probably be the best place to put it.
Do you think one public hearing could handle discussion of both items?
So they do have to be noticed as separate public hearings.
Ah. Okay.
That's the way I have advised to treat it. I have language and so forth.
All right.
That we can take care of it with.
In along Sally's question, then, so we have now, I guess, 2 public hearings, if we decide based on that to opt out, then we should have another 1 or 2 public hearings afterwards for the actual regulations, or no?
No, the regulations would be done at the Planning and Zoning Commission
Planning and
level.
zoning.
That's what I
Yeah,
wasn't
that's within
sure
their
about.
jurisdiction, yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah.
need to come back to the
No.
Board of Selectmen.
No, they
We
just-
only need to do that for the opt-out portion.
They just want oversight on, yeah.
That's interesting, though, that
It is,
we
it's
have
never
the
been
final
done.
say on that, and when they actually promulgate the regulations.
And I
wonder who
in the
put that
20
in there.
in the 25 years I've been practicing, I've never seen anything like it.
I know, it's very
Yeah.
strange.
Jen, when do you suggest we have these public hearings? We have to notice it, Valerie will handle that. We just can't arbitrarily set a date now, we have to look at calendars and things. By when? What's the last?
Well, the opt-outs have to occur by January 1st of 2023. Certainly, I don't suggest that you wait until December. So.
So perhaps in
as early as
September, or is that too late?
That is fine. I think that's fine to do that. Yeah, because there'll be still, you're probably going to be considering the plan at that point as well. So
Right, I think that's an important point, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, maybe because now that I've reread this, and when if we opt out and then planning and zoning puts new regulations in, what's our deadline for the new regulations?
there is no deadline.
Oh, okay.
They'll go through a process. So that's a public hearing process as well. So,
We don't
we'll
that done by
have,
January 1st.
no,
We have a little more time after that.
All right, so we'll work on, we'll have to look at our schedules, of course, okay, on our meetings, other board meetings, and Val, maybe we can work on a couple of dates, and you can then communicate with Jennifer, Bill, and Sally, and we'll have to notice the meetings, and we'll move forward.
Okay. Could we have them on the same day as a Board of Selectmen meeting, or do you think it?
I don't think that that's a problem. I've done a couple of them, and there's been some public input, but not a lot.
So let's stay on that just for a second, because if we want to go that route, then we
We
could
could
maybe
do
August,
September,
or September, October, August, September here, at this meeting,
I
if you like.
wouldn't do August because it's vacation
Okay.
time
Yeah,
for a lot of
that's why I
people.
think
I think
September,
September makes
October.
sense.
Does
I think so.
October make you nervous?
I think September's a good idea.
But if we have to
Yeah.
do 2 separate, and we do one at our September BOS and one in our October BOS,
I think they're short public hearings, so, I mean,
And do
in
we-
terms of the part,
And when do we take our vote on opting out? Right then?
you can
Yeah.
decide to delay deliberation. It's it's entirely up to you.
Well, along your line about don't wait till December, once September rolls around, it seems like December's the next day, in my opinion, right? So that's why I'm saying, are you comfortable with September, October
Yeah, I'm fine.
for our hearings?
I think
If we
that's
want to
fine.
make them on the same day as
Much
our.
more convenient doing it here in those two meetings, to your point,
Yeah.
so.
I
You've
would,
gotta
I
deal
would
with
keep
Trader
them
Joe's. You don't have
on the
time.
same, I'm sorry. I would keep them on the same day. I just think,
You would- you would, or-
I would keep them on the same day.
So-
I mean, they're related matters. It's similar, process that you're following. I don't know why you would
So the September meeting,
separate
Board
them.
of Selectmen here, do the.
Oh, I
two.
thought you said the hearings had to be on
But-
separate days.
No, not on separate days. They need to be separate hearings.
Ah,
Do them back to back.
Do it in September.
my nudge, okay, I got it.
September,
That
the
makes it-
September
Okay.
Board of Selectmen is actually on September 1st,
Okay.
which is still
So
kinda
she's
like
concerned September 1st is still,
Labor Day
school and
weekend.
everything.
so we could do both of them at
think
separate
on
hearings
October
on our
6th.
October meeting.
All right, let's go with that. I like that.
Does that make you nervous about
No,
the deadline?
I'm fine with that.
We don't want you nervous.
Let's just hope we don't have weather.
Well,
No weather.
but I like your comments here, Val, and Sally also, because you don't want to have it in the middle of summer. You don't want to have a Labor Day weekend. We have it at a time when we know that there's, people are going to be back.
People who are interested could come and comment and let you know what they think. Yep.
I'm good with it. Okay.
October 6th.
Okay. See how many people we get. So,
October 6th.
3.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, all right, very good. Do we need to go through 7, Jen, or are we good here?
Oh, I covered 7.
Okay, very good.
Do you want us,
I just
do you
slid
need us
right
to
into
read
that.
it into the record or not?
No, I don't think that's necessary.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
So Sally, I turn this
Yes,
over to you.
number 8, I had a couple of discussion items. I just wanted to follow up on Alden Mead's appointment to the Blight Commission, which we did last month. And during public comment, Mrs. Barrett had asked a question because Mr. Mead is also a member of our police commission, if there was any conflict. And we discussed it, and we didn't think so, but we kind of was suggested that I would look into it, and I did. And I looked at the blight ordinance, and interestingly, it does prohibit police officers from serving on blight. And so I think that shows that Mrs. Barrett's question was certainly meritorious, because the blight ordinance was 11 years ago, so I really don't, I don't remember what went into, that was prior to my time on the Board of Selectmen, why police officers were specifically prohibited from serving on blight. But, it begs the question, well, what about their supervisors, which is police commission members? But, through your office, Town Attorney D'Onofrio issued an opinion. A matter of fact, it's in our packet. But I was made aware of his opinion that it is not a violation, and I was very happy to hear that, as I'm sure we all are, because as Mrs. Barrett said at her public comment, she has, we think Alden will do a fantastic job on blight. He's worked so hard on other commissions. He's a great member of the Police Commission, I believe, and he's a member of Affordable Housing, so a dedicated town servant. So, but I felt an obligation to pursue it once I saw that police officers were not allowed. And but we got a town opinion that it is not a violation, and so I had called Alden and told him that, and so I'm very happy to hear it. But it was certainly deserving of a quick look-see because of that prohibition. What?
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
Because I wrote the ordinance. ordinance.
Okay,
And I can tell you exactly why that language is what it is. It's directly from the hearing procedure for citation statute.
okay,
7152C.
right,
Says, it's in subsection B, the chief executive officer of any such municipality shall appoint one or more citation hearing officers other than police officers or employees or persons who issue citations to conduct the hearings authorized by this section. So that's where I took that language from. That's why I wrote that section the way that I did,
right.
was from that statute.
Right, and then I looked at 7279, which says that police commissioners can issue subpoenas and capias, and should they not appear, and whether that is somehow could be determined to be too citation-like, but it was Attorney D'Onofrio's opinion that it was not. But I thought it was a meritorious question to ask, and so I'm very pleased how it turned out, and again, the board welcomes Mr. Alden's service on Blight, and I know he'll do a great job. But I just wanted to put it on the agenda because I did mention at last month's meeting that I would just look at the ordinance, which I did, so that's great.
All right, I'm glad you're on board, because you know.
Oh, yes.
So the genesis of this whole thing was Jenny Caldwell and Frederick Rodriguez asked to see me, the chair and vice chair of the DTC. They asked me if I'd support Alden. Of course, that for me was easy, because Alden's always had my support here in town. He's demonstrated to me for at least the last 12 years, I think I met him in my second year in office, that he cares about the town of North Haven. He's got the best interests of the town. And that he has such a compelling background in everything he's done. All his accomplishments, and still today, recently appointed a major position at the Yale Healthcare, in terms of his expertise on ophthalmology. I mean, he's a very impressive man, and he's got a great background in many areas, and he's faithfully served the police commission. So he's always had my support. I told Jenny Caldwell and Frederick when they came to see me here that he would have my support.
This was never about support or belief in his opinion to do a great job. It was to make sure that we were complying with the ordinance, and
Okay.
that's all it was about. And I thought it was an interesting question. No, he's not a police officer. He is a police commissioner. But it's still, I thought, was deserving of a safety net town attorney evaluation. This was never, ever questioning
I'm not suggesting that.
his authority, his determination, his integrity, and how badly I voted in favor of him. Of course, he's my friend. And it was never about that. You might recall that I questioned Rich Monaco's eligibility to be town treasurer because he was also the chairman of the Board of Finance, because there's a provision in our charter that if you are incapacitated, the treasurer and the chairman of the Board of Finance vote on a replacement. So I made the argument that the town charter assumes that the treasurer and the chairman of the Board of Finance are two different people. So I questioned that. And so I don't look at whether it's an R or a D after their name when I question the appropriateness. Are we following our own rules? So as I questioned that appointment, I'm not going to not question. And again, I wasn't questioning. I was just trying to confirm that we were complying with our own ordinance. And I'm not going to not look into it because he's a D. That doesn't, you know me.
We're not
You-
suggesting that.
Yeah.
But I want you to know, you got real-time information, because Jeff was in my office. I said, Valerie, call Sally, Jeff's in here, and he followed up with this letter.
Yes, yeah, no,
And
she
to-
called me,
Jennifer's
and I
commission.
was relieved that it was not a conflict.
All right.
But again, and in fact, I called Alden and told him what I was doing, and he was very supportive of the inquiry. He wanted to make sure that everything was okay, because he looked at it too. So that's what this is all about. I want to make sure we're following our own rules. that's all.
Well, I think we're actually following the general statute. If I understood what Jennifer just said, that she just parroted it in our ordinance, the general statute.
Right.
And, and I think, Sally, as we both know from looking at the general statutes that sometimes come out of Hartford, they may be nonsensical. So, I mean, like it says here, all members, it can't be a police officer, well, or employee of the town. Well, our police officers are employees of the town. But if you were a state police officer, or you're a police officer in New Haven, why would we have a presumption that they would be unfair on being on the Board of Appeals? Or, or a police officer in, or correction officers, a correction officer, a police officer? So who up in Hartford even put that language in the general statute? I could see saying a town employee, or somebody who has, issues citations for the town, but are we, it's almost presumptuous that it believes that police officers, whether they work for the town or, work for another town or elsewhere, would be inherently, unfair.
Well, it specifically prohibits police officers, and so the question is
It's like many of the
a
unfunded
police
mandates.
commissioner a
It's like
police
many
officer?
of the unfunded mandates that we get from the
Yep.
state of Connecticut, that, somebody threw this in the statute and didn't actually really, it got passed like at 2 a.m. in the morning and nobody paid attention to it. So I think the statute, actually maybe we shouldn't have adopted the statute. I guess as Jennifer said, we had no choice, right?
Well, because the intention of the drafter.
You have to come to the microphone.
So the intention of the drafter, and I can say that because
You were the,
well, I can only speak to the ordinance. I can't speak to why it is there. But the intention is that your board, your Blight Prevention Appeals Board, is the citation hearing officer. So that's why I put that language in.
gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
All right, next item.
So I was very relieved of that legal opinion, but I wanted to explain that I did follow through and why I followed through, and I'm thrilled with the result. That I thought it was a very good question, and I am thrilled with the result and happy that Alden will be serving on Blight, and I know he'll do a great job. So my second item, I just had a brief follow-up discussion on the $3.5 million bonding resolution that was recently approved at the town meeting last month. I just, I listened to, I watched it, I was there, of course, and I participated and spoke at that meeting, and I watched it again. And I just, I still don't quite understand, based on the wording of the resolution, specifically item 3, which says that, installation of grandstand seating at the middle school synthetic turf fields, why that would also allow the, for the installation of the 6-foot fence to go around the fields. Now, I voted in favor of this because the baseball field and the softball field need help. The baseball field was put in the wrong place from the beginning. Softball field needs a lot of updating. I thought about saying, well, could we separate it out? I remember once we had a bonding referendum where we separated out the different parcels. It was the fire department renovations. There were 3 different issues on the same bonding referendum. Milling, the fire department renovations, and a $700,000 appropriation for a building, a storage facility at the Elm Street Public Works. So we have some recent history of separating out bonding questions, and I thought about it at the town meeting of trying to divide it up into 1, 2, and 3, because I was certainly in favor of 1 and 2 and 3, but how can we have a lot of specific language in 1 and 2, seating, press box, netting, restrooms, parking, dugouts, but with the third one, it's just the installation of grandstand seating at the middle school synthetic turf field. So how legally, can we use some of this bonding money to put a fence around that entire field? It's not in here.
Well, bond counsel says we can do it, but I think, this discussion is based on something we don't know, and that is, and let me fill everybody in, okay? So we had a sale for our bonds. It went very well.
Good.
And I had to answer a lot of questions, which I did. I answered the questions. And we got a 1.9% interest rate, which is really good in terms of, this environment. So we will be getting the money on July 14th. That's the closing date. And at that point, I think with inflation, the 3.5 million is not going to go as far as to cover everything here. And we have to go out to competitive bid. We'll see how that goes. And then it may end up to be a menu of items that are going to be priorities. And the fence may end up not being part of it. It may have to be funded separately.
I don't think it should be. I mean, the Board of Ed is sitting on a relatively large capital improvement fund. The 6-foot fence, I consulted with a town staff member who explained to me that the 6-foot fence must encompass the entire complex around both turf fields with gates. It'll be outside the current 4-foot fence. It's not replacing the 4-foot fence, it's going outside of that. And that is to comply with CIAC regulations, which is Connecticut Inter-Athletic Conference regulations. I assume so that maybe state tournaments, games could be played there?
That's right, and collect revenue, that's right.
And that revenue is going to the Board of Ed?
Yeah.
So it's not in the resolution that was voted on at the town meeting. They're the ones benefiting. I mean, again, I was a varsity athlete at North Haven High. I support athletics, you know that. But right is right, and it's not in here, and they've got plenty of money to put that fence up themselves. So if money's tight, that should be the first thing off the list, and have the Board of Ed do it. That's what I tried to say. I don't, you're saying the bonding council says you can do it. Then why do you even put anything specific in here if you could just do anything you want? All right,
Look, I
okay.
think we
I
can-
just wanted to voice that opinion
Yeah.
once more.
We can certainly revisit this next month, okay?
Sure.
We'll have a better handle on where we're going to go with this.
Okay.
And so I accept your question of it, and we'll
Yes.
see how.
And you might recall that I specifically moved to add number 3
I know you did.
to the original resolution.
Right.
Because there was nothing in 1 or 2 that allows for the grandstand seating, and I think we need it there.
Yeah.
Because, I have no problem with the grandstand seating in there, but I specifically left out the catch-all language that's in the other 2 and other related improvements, because that's all that I wanted. So I feel like the amendment that I added to make sure that the grandstand seating was going to be included is now being kind of abused, and the fencing is being added on to that, which was not in the resolution, and the Board of Ed has plenty of money to do it themselves, the fencing, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to restate my opinion, and I thank you for your time, so we can move on.
Okay.
And I think as Mike said, it may be a moot point in the sense that we don't know. I think you maybe, because it was discussed at other meetings and also at the Board of Finance, and I think it was a good faith effort to put together a number that would work. And with the way inflation is now, you wonder whether, good news is the bonding has come off at a good pricing for us, but you wonder whether, how much of this will actually happen based on the way materials prices are right now.
I understand that. My point is it shouldn't come down to whether it's moot or not. I don't think it's authorized, so.
Right. Feel free to
but
bring it back
that's
up.
it.
Feel free
Yeah.
to bring it back up next month.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time. So
Okay.
we can move on to number 9. I'll do the first one, which is, I'll make a motion for the reappointment of Peter Sandor, 10 Deer Run Lane, to the Quinnipiac Valley Health District Board of Directors for a 3-year term to expire June 30th, 2025.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second Peter's appointment, reappointment.
All right, in the discussion, I'd like to thank Peter. Peter came to me from William Colehep, who happens to be a friend of mine and happened to be a very important figure within the Quinnipiac Medical School as a physician's assistant, and he did a great job there. He's since retired. So Bill was on this board, and Bill and his wife Peggy moved. They moved to Durham. So Bill recommended Peter to come in to me, and I talked to Peter, and he also has a lot of experience at Quinnipiac University in their medical program. And he's been a great alternate, and he's been a great member. So Peter, thank you very much for being willing to stay with us. We appreciate it. Okay, so we have a motion, a second. We had discussion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item, Bill.
Next item is, I'll make a motion for the resignation of Anita Anderson, 32 Sheffield Road, from the Board of Education, effective July 1st, 2022, term to expire November 30th, 2025.
Okay, there's a motion. Sally, is there a second?
Yes, I'll second it, and I would like to just make a quick comment.
Yeah.
I want to thank Anita Anderson for her years of service on the Board of Ed. She was the chair during some volatile times, the middle school building project, the mascot issue. During my 9+ years here, I probably reached out to her a few times, 3 or 4 times. She was always very accommodating and cooperative with me and giving me information that I had requested. So I thank her for service, especially with the tough issues that she dealt with. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. So I feel very fortunate, ladies and gentlemen, as the chief elected official here, to have had such an outstanding relationship with the Board of Ed Chair, Anita, and the superintendent in the school system. It doesn't always happen that way in municipal government. She faithfully served this board, and I don't think she'll mind me saying that it's been so tumultuous, as Sally mentioned, with boards of ed all over the state. Anita said to me, Mike, I'm going to do this because I know you want me to continue, because she was a stabilizing force. I think you'll agree. Mm-hmm. She did a great job. She's moving on, and she's now become president of the Rotary Club. And I was at that Rotary Club dinner last week in Hamden, 2 weeks ago, and so now she's moving on to a different chapter. So thank you very much, Anita. We'll still see each other. You know, I support the Rotary and all the Rotary Club members, and I'll see you at the Rotary Club function. So thank you. Motion, second, we had discussion.
Yeah, as she pointed out, it was actually, just for the record, as I think she very well noted in her email, it's been 14 years. So,
14 years, yeah.
So that definitely, it's not like, that's obviously well over, almost a decade and a half. So I think she definitely did a great service to the town of North Haven over a long period of time. So thank you, Anita.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Sally next.
And I will move for the appointment of Martin L. Rudnick, 128 Summer Lane, to the Board of Education to fill the unexpired term of Anita Anderson, term to expire November 30th, 2025.
So we have an overview of Martin's background here. It's in both your packets as an extensive background in education. He had been the president of the Milford Federation of Teachers, vice president of the Milford Education Association, chairman of the Retirement Commission for the State of Connecticut Education, and member of the State Teachers Retirement Board earlier in his career. So he's willing to step up, knowing that there's still a lot of tension with boards of eds all over the state. So I thank you, Martin, for being willing to step up. Any other discussion?
Plus, he has, along the same list to recommend him for the Board of Education. He has an MS and a BS in education and his 6th year certificate in administration. So So it definitely is more than qualified to be appointed to the board to replace Anita. So I'll second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so let's see, we bill number 10 then?
5 property tax refunds, all in small amounts and nothing unusual, so I'll make a motion to approve those property tax refunds.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for that vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
So we're at item number 11, ladies and gentlemen. The next regular scheduled meeting of this Board of Selectmen will be Thursday, August 4th, here at 6:30, upstairs in Memorial Town Hall. Public comment. Anybody would like to make any comments? Alden Mead.
I'd just like to say thank you to everyone. Everyone here is always my friend, and if I don't know somebody well enough, they're a friendly acquaintance, and I really appreciate, especially the demonstration of bipartisan support. So it makes me feel really good. I grew up at a time, where sometimes you could like one issue, but you could like another issue more. Didn't have to be opposed. You could like one candidate, but you could like another more. When I was 6, I grew up in Greenwich, so you can imagine I've always been somewhat of a liberal Democrat. There has to be a D on some of your committees. And I remember all the other kids were always saying, well, I like Ike. I'm pretty old. That would be Eisenhower. And I would think, but I like Adley. And that would be Stevenson. So anyway, I thought this was a great demonstration that brought me back to times where we could have those kind of conversations. And I'm appreciative of everyone here, and I'm appreciative of, please always apply the same rule to me you would apply to anybody. But I respect that.
And thank you for your service to our country, Alden.
That's right.
Thank you.
He did
Okay.
2 tours.
I know he did, yeah. Okay.
Good evening, Nancy Barrett, Crestview Drive. So I was just wondering, first of all, if I could get an update from Mr. Frieda or any member of the board on the renovation of the track and Vanacore Field.
Yeah, so it's moving along very, very quickly, actually. And there's been a clearing out of the area. The track has, most of the track has been removed already. And once the rest of it's removed, then they'll start laying the surface on the new track. We have estimated that it would be mid-October before it opens. At this rate, it could be sooner with the progress they've made. So everything is moving along smoothly. It's shut down, of course, for the construction, and we're happy right now that it's kind of jumped out of the starting block, so to speak, it being a track. I'll use that metaphor. And the contractors have done a good job so far. A lot of work left, though.
Right. And the football games, I assume, will have to be played elsewhere. So where will those take place? in the
So
fall?
that's kind of the athletic director's recommendation, and his recommendation has been that it'll be on the turf fields.
Oh, really? Wow.
At least a few of the games, anyway. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, and my next question, again, relates to the point that Ms. Boyme had brought up, which is regarding the $3.5 million debt finance project, which, as she pointed out, seems to be at least influenced, if not motivated, by the requirements of the CIAC in order to host sports tournaments. So my first question is, she pointed out that the language of the actual resolution that was voted on at the town meeting did not include fencing around the grandstand seating. And Mr. Fried, I believe you presented a list of all of the line items that add up to $3.5 million, and you included renovation of the JV baseball field. But once again, the actual language of the resolution that we all voted on is specific to the boys' high school baseball field, and it's just a singular field. So once again, I think this is another case in which we voted on specific language that, obviously you took the time to make it specific, and yet other things seem to be added in. So I'm just wondering how exactly we can do that.
They could very well be added out, so we have to see where this goes. We'll address this next month, and maybe we'll have bond counsel come in and address it. So, okay.
That JV field, that's not the one right, or maybe it is, right at the corner of Bailey and the entrance to the middle school? Or is that,
It's called Valley Brookfield.
right? So
Yeah, that's the JV field.
that is the one, okay, because I thought it referred, there's also fields, as you're coming into the North Haven Athletic Complex, like heading toward DeMayo Field.
Right.
There's a bridge
That's the field, yeah.
over the stream,
That's
and
the
there's
JV.
fields there.
That's the JV field, yeah.
So that's the one that's referenced?
I think
where the-
so.
So that's not the one at the corner of Bailey and,
Oh, no,
and
Bailey.
the entrance to
No,
the middle school?
So,
That's the middle school field, I
right.
think.
Yeah, so the Bailey Road field is being treated in a separate grant that we
Right.
have.
Okay.
So
Well,
this
that's my
has nothing
point.
to do with Bailey Field.
I have the document that Ms. Barrett is referring to, and you have JV Field.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if it was the one at the corner of Bailey Road and the entrance.
No, it's not.
No, so it is the one. For older folks like me, that was the old East Campus
That's right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
practice field. Okay, over the bridge. We used to have a gym class
Right.
there.
Right.
Nothing in this has anything to do with Bailey Road, so.
Okay, all right, because I thought you, when I first asked it, you said it, yes, but no. Okay,
No,
I got it.
I wasn't sure which field you were talking about.
Right.
but
Right.
Bailey Road, entrance to middle school, separate and
Separate.
distinct from this.
This is the one that's over
The bridge.
the bridge. Right, there's, yeah, we used to play softball there. We used
Yeah.
to have all sorts, okay, got it.
Okay.
Right, and again, if you add up all of those line items that Mr. Frieda provided, it's just a hair over $3.5 million. So what will actually pay for, the bank fees and the consultants and the legal fees and all of the other things that aren't necessarily those
It's all-
line items?
It's all part of the 3.5 million, so we're not gonna get everything that we're asking for here. So,
Right.
there's gonna be value, it's gonna be value engineered. Unless the competitive bids come in so low that we can do everything.
Okay.
Including the fees for 3.5 million.
Okay.
So just so everyone knows, there will not be one penny more than 3.5 million spent. And if it's not enough money, then there's gonna be a decision made from the athletic facilities, the Board of Ed, and we're also gonna engage the sports groups to determine what are the priorities, so.
Okay, I just wasn't sure whether those line items had like a slight markup in order to actually accommodate these other fees. But you're saying, again, they're all estimates, so
All
so you don't know
Yeah.
what it costs until you know what it costs.
Exactly.
Right.
But I wasn't sure whether there was some, additional markup that was built into those estimates in order to account for these other things, but you're saying no.
Yeah, I think there's a contingency markup that we always do on these, before we go out to bid. That's
Sure.
in there somewhere, but beyond that, those are just strictly estimates, so.
Right.
Until we do the competitive bid process.
Right. And again, I just wanted to echo the point that Ms. Boehme made, which was the question that, really, why are the taxpayers picking up the bill ultimately for this debt financing, but the BOE collects any revenues from the rental revenue that would come in from the use of those fields by outside, whether it be a private or for-profit athletic organizations. So it seems like there's a bit of a disconnect there, that if the taxpayers are ultimately paying for the next 18 years for this debt, that there should be some benefit to the taxpayers, not just to the Board of Ed. And I understand they're all connected.
Yeah, they are all connected.
Of course.
But I think the benefit is any fees they collect, and I'll give you a good example, on the turf fields, I helped them orchestrate a 3-year deal for usage of the field at $11,000 a year. So that $33,000 after 3 years is going to go to the Board of Ed, but it'll help fund any maintenance that the fields need in the future. So the revenue is going to be put back into at least maintenance to help defer the taxpayers' future expenses. So it's all connected.
Right. Well, that was one of the questions that I did ask at a Board of Finance meeting, is whether this particular contract for the lacrosse use, for example, would actually be utilized for the future costs of replacing the turf fields, because that's something that hasn't been really
Yeah,
addressed.
either replacing it or maintaining it. But yes, the answer conceptually is yes on that.
Right,
Yep,
right.
So,
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Katz, waiting very patiently back there. Sir, how are you? I have 20 times.
Good evening. Shirley Katz, Sherwood Drive. First thing I want to say is I'm glad to see that you relieved yourself of some of these responsibilities. I think that was a very important thing. I've said that many times. Could you go into the procurement pay, how much that person's going to earn?
90,000, it's in the budget for 90,000.
90,000.
That's what's budgeted, yes.
All right, I bring this up because you're having problems hiring a CPA or someone for the finance. And you've limited that to like $84,000.
Yeah, 84, 87.
It's 87.
87, yeah.
Well, Mike, you know, in business, you hire people to do a job, and if you're not a competitive price range, 2-3 months down the road, that person might just move.
You're right.
So you could be turning over that job several times in the next year.
You're absolutely right.
And I don't think that $84,000 is a lot of money for that particular job. You have hourly employees in the town. I granted with some of their overtime, they're making $120,000 a year.
Right.
And I really think that you need to look at a more attractive wage package.
So sure, I'm glad to hear you say that, and I think you're absolutely right on this, okay? So one of the selling points I hope we can present next week is that this job on the comptroller, even though it's not a CPA, the CPA brings it to a different level in terms
Right.
of compensation. But by putting it in the supervisors union, which it always had been when Ed started, it allows growth, financial growth, because there's steps within the supervisors union. So I'm hoping that we can at least convince this young lady to take this job, showing her future growth and showing her a little bit of security. But we are at a competitive disadvantage. The young man, Kishore, who I really was interested in, he wanted $124,500. That's higher than most of the people on the town side. I mean,
You had a field service for the public works, and you were paying him 110,
Right.
115.
Right. So to bring in,
You know, you're not balancing the scales, Mike.
but then this, I'm sure this will resonate with you, Sherman, that I have also an obligation to balance the taxpayers, in terms of mill rates and tax increases.
Yes.
So the more, if we were to take all these positions and index them as to what the market rate is today, there'd be hundreds of thousands of dollars that I'd have to fund in this government to make these salaries competitive in today's environment.
Well, I'm not suggesting all the salaries, all the jobs, but you have certain specific jobs where you have a limited number of employees.
Yes.
Such as 1 or 2. And I really think you need to look at that a little more carefully.
Okay.
That's enough of that. Sackett Point Road Bridge. That's like an ongoing train where the guy can't get off in his station in Boston. Is it ever going to be finished?
So
Is there a date?
Here's the update. This has been a very difficult project. And it's been a very difficult project because during the original phases, there was a pipe that was crushed underneath the bridge. I said this about a year ago, that required to be redone. If not, we would have had half the town backed up on sewer backups because it went into the WPCA. That delayed it. And then, of course, the bad weather, that delayed it. But here's where we are right now. So we were told, and keep in mind, 88% of this approximately is funded by the feds and the federal government and the state. We have the lowest amount. So we're under certain jurisdictions on this. We were told that it's going to be 3.5 years, 3 years and 5 months, almost 3.5 years before it's done, from about 4 weeks ago. And we were also told by the engineers that 3.5 years from now, there is a chance that the bridge could collapse. 10 years ago, it was rated a 2 and an 8. What that means is the subdeck was an 8, top level was a 2, so it was manageable. There was no weight requirements. So it was presented to us a recommendation that we make Sackett Point 1 lane. One lane meaning that there's now signalization there. So if you come in from State Street, Sherman, say you come out of your street, Sherwood, go down State and take a left on Sackett Point.
Yeah,
There's only one lane there.
right.
And we have police officers regulating the traffic, so we went from 2 lanes to
No, they're
1.
sitting in the cars, Mike. They're not regulating anything.
All right, well,
Come on. Go drive by there and
I'll
take
try
a
to give
look.
you an explanation, Sherman, okay?
It's nasty over, it's very dangerous.
It
These
is.
guys have got to get out there and with their hands.
Well, I sat there, I went myself to drive it, because I wanted to see how long it would
Yeah.
delay. From the railroad tracks, it was 10 minutes from the railroad tracks coming eastbound. It was 10 minutes at the peak traffic time to get to Universal Drive. And when I was there, cops were directing traffic. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. What that does for us, it takes 3.5 years and makes it 1.7 years. Because they're gonna have more time to spend rather than deal with the 2 lanes. So here's where I come into play. Our engineer comes to me and says, Mike, these are the recommendations. So I have to make quick decisions, and people don't know what I go through here, all these major problems that are presented to me. I have to make a decision. If I say no, keep it at 2 lanes, and God forbid that bridge collapsed within 3.5 years, the town's responsible for that. That's not a risk that I can take. So I then made the final call and said, okay, make it 1 lane. The state was very pleased that I did that. And they're under the Fed guidelines because the feds are paying most of this, the federal government,
Are you saying it's gonna stay 1 lane
until November. And then,
just until November?
that's the plan right now.
And then it'll go to 3 lanes?
No.
It's never gonna be 3?
Well,
It was planned to be 3 originally.
yeah, that's still undetermined at this point, and I'm not sure where that's gonna end up. But in November, they stop the work because there's certain work times they have to stop. Then it goes back to the 2 lanes. And then it remains to be seen if it has to go back to 1 lane in the spring, depending upon how much work they can get done this summer and this fall. So that's where we're at.
Okay, can't argue with it. Driving down the road, I noticed that the roof on the library looks terrible, and as well as the swimming pool roof. I know we had the roof on the library painted about 5, 6 years ago,
Yes,
and that's all wearing off.
I noticed that too.
And I don't know if that damages the roof or just is a poor appearance.
It's a poor appearance.
That's all it is.
I'm not happy with it, but it's $100,000 to do each roof, and I don't have that money right now.
Well, they paid for that library last time.
They did, but not, that's
That's it? It's all over.
That warranty is done, so. But I'll give you credit though, Sherman, because I think you were one of the first ones to say, is there a warranty? We examined that, and 5 or 6 years ago, we utilized that warranty to
Yeah.
get that repainted, so.
They painted it.
That's right.
So we'll just have to look at it until someday we have enough money to paint it.
Well, it's contrary to what we're trying to accomplish here. Because I've said many times, I'm on a self-improvement model. Personally, as it relates to the town, I'm at the point where if I see a rusty trash can on the green, I call Public Works or Streets and Roads and say, put a new cap on that. So driving down Elm Street, seeing those 2 roofs doesn't make me happy. But to spend $200,000 on those right now, we just don't have the money.
Don't have it, okay.
Right.
All right, I just questioned it.
Okay, so.
If it's still under warranty. The Gaylord building on Divine Street, there's a lot of construction. What are they actually doing there?
So that's part of one of my projects, so it's a great question. So when Health Tracks went out, is that what you're talking about, Sherman?
Yeah.
Yep. So when Health Tracks went out, they went out because of COVID and the pandemic. So OR&L is a developer I work very closely with.
Yeah.
So what we did was we orchestrated a concept where, to tie in with the rest of the medical facility, that a rehabilitation and physical therapy center will go there under the Gaylord umbrella. So that's what you're seeing there, Sherman, okay?
Now, when Health Tracks was in there, there was some tax paid to the town
Yeah.
for the Health Tracks.
Yeah.
Will Gaylord be paying any of the, will that tax revenue disappear?
No.
Bec-
No, I'll tell you why, because it's being leased, they don't own it. So OR&L is the owner, and that's who pays us the taxes.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I got you there. I think Tim Donahue is a good replacement for the Board of Finance Commission.
He's down there.
I've watched him for a good
Yeah.
10, 12 years. Seems
When
to
I
be all right.
first met you, and you sat right over there, and then I first came aboard here, no one knew who I was.
You were over there.
I was over there, okay? And you and I first met. Tim Doheny was on the board. He had been on the board for a couple of years even then.
Yeah.
So the reason I got on the board, I was asked by the then administration, we need people from the corporate sector to sit on either the Board of Finance or the Board of Ed, and they gave me a choice, and I wasn't even going to do it until they told me it was only one night a month, and I said, you know what, I might be able to fit that in, and that's how I met Tim, that's how I met you.
Yeah. I'm glad to see that we're not in the same kind of situation as West Haven with this federal money. I know you watch very carefully how we spend it and stay within the rules, so I appreciate that, give you credit for it. I did want a CPA in the finance department, and you did too several months ago, but that's life. You have to live with it. I think that's, oh, I know what it is.
Yep.
There's a company in North Haven that has about 60 to 80, 70 vehicles, and they're not registered in North Haven. They're registered in a town that has a 9.1 mill rate, because we have a 34.7 or something like that? 30.7?
30.71.
Yeah, 37. And I really think that we need to go after them.
Well, I know you may not want to say what the company is here tonight, but if you want to call me tomorrow, let me know, so.
Yeah.
All right, so.
All right. And along with that, I'm starting to see more and more vehicles registered out of state.
Yeah.
Expensive vehicles, $60,000, $70,000 vehicles. As a matter of fact, I worked for a dealership once where I had to go to Vermont to register a vehicle that was going to be in North Haven.
Yeah. So,
but I had no choice. But
yeah.
you're looking at a lot of money, and when you talk about not being able to afford certain things, as $50,000, $60,000, there's money out there, and you just have to get up there and go after it.
So I know this has been something, Sherman, for years you've talked about here. So what we're doing is, we had that fiasco years ago. We hired the outside company. They took 50%, and it was almost like people felt that their privacy was infringed on. They were taking photos of houses.
But they were breaking the law.
So, but what we do is that our assessor, once he hears of a license plate, the assessor's department, they will send them bills, and we've done that here. They'll do the research, they'll take the license plate, and we've sent out bills, and people have paid the bills.
So you can do that?
That's what we've done, yes.
Okay. Because if you go to some of these apartments, I know you'll say Quinnipiac, and the governor has just changed the way people pay taxes on their vehicles. There's a maximum mill rate, and he did that for some of the wealthier towns.
The distressed towns.
Yeah,
The what?
opposite.
He did it more for the distressed towns, meaning that,
Stanford is distressed?
well, no.
Darien is distressed?
Well,
Norwalk is distressed? Fairfield? Come on.
If you look at the towns and cities with the highest mill rates, so Hartford is 77 mill rate, Waterbury, Hamden. So prior to the governor's announcement, the mill rate for car taxes was maxed out at 45 mills. This new program brings it down to 32.48.
Yeah.
The reason North Haven residents don't get a benefit, because our mill rate's 30.71. So I had this discussion on the green at the concert the other night, where some people came up to me and asked me this. And if you take our neighboring town of Hamden, so the residents there were being taxed at a 45 mill rate for the cars. Now it's down to 32.48. They are still paying more in Hamden than the same car would be in North Haven.
Yes.
And when I take people through that, they understand it to their credit.
But the next step is your real property,
Right.
your home. At some point, the governor is going to say, some governor may say, well, if we did this for the vehicles, we should do it for the homes.
Right.
And you have to make up those dollars somewhere.
So I'm going to give you some inside baseball here, Sherman, because I know this is an important topic for you, okay? So when I was president of Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, this first came up. A lot of the cities and towns didn't want this because those cities and towns who now have dropped the mill rate from 45 to 32.48, they have to wait to get reimbursed from the state for that difference. Car taxes are millions and millions of dollars for every municipality. The cash flow aspect of that, a lot of my colleagues, the mayors and first selectmen, they're very nervous about that because they have to make up, not only wait for the money to be reimbursed, but it's a cash flow issue for many municipalities. We're not in that position because our mill rate was always lower than the 45 and still lower than the 32.48.
So this is one of those times when it's good to be a well-run city, town,
Well,
and have a low mill rate.
I think there's a lot of confusion over it because the publicity was car taxes are going to be cut. And, you know, people have busy lives.
They didn't read the whole
Yeah, and
thing.
you can't blame them because they're living their lives.
Yeah.
So you read the headlines without all the details, and so our residents who are going to pay lower than surrounding municipalities for that car, and then unbeknownst to any of us, with the shortage of chips, new cars so difficult to get, used car values skyrocketed dramatically.
Yeah.
I mean, my own car doubled what the taxes were the previous time.
Yeah, I'm afraid to see what mine's going to be. Fortunately, I only have one car now. I think that's about all I have to say. I'm glad to see we're doing all right. Town's running nicely, and that you're getting extra help, and maybe that'll add some more good, healthy years to your life, because we need to keep you here for another 10, 12 years. If not, then some people are going to haunt you. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Sherman. Thank you. All right. Okay. Seeing no more comment, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick announcement. I'm a longtime member of the North Haven Historical Society. They're having a grand reopening on July 17th.
Our friend Ann Clark.
Yes.
Yes, I'll be there on the 17th.
So
yeah.
I just wanted folks, I just felt I wanted to say that, so you might want to attend. They work very hard.
They do.
To,
we got the grant, and that's
Yes.
part of this whole thing.
you're right, they work very hard to preserve the history of the town, so I'll be there. I'm sure you will be too.
Ann was so excited
Yeah.
when I told her we got this grant. I'd signed off on it. The 3rd Congressional District Office said, Mike, we saw your name on the grant. We're going to make sure this gets on the short list. And that's $600,000 that Bill we're going to get for the Martha Culver House. Let me share with you folks before we conclude what that means. That means we're going to be able to renovate the interior of Martha Culver. And what that means is that now our elementary school children can go on field trips into that house, which essentially will be like a museum. And those little children will learn more about the history of North Haven. So I was very grateful when I got that call from the 3rd Congressional District Office. We saw your name on the grant. We're going to get it for you. And they got it for us. And I think it's going to be a good event on the 17th.
Yeah, I'm looking, so I just wanted to mention it. But with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
It's been a long time coming, though. I know we've
Oh.
talked about it
Yeah.
for some time, so I think it is great that it finally will be done.
All right, motion, second?
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you at the August meeting. Have a good evening.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.